Hey, we're back for another portfolio project review. This was requested by Dozy on Twitter. So, I actually went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to do this review when I initially loaded the website. And I do. I decided I did want to do it because I think this is going to be really good advice. And I think you made a common mistake that a lot of people, when they're learning development, first make. And that is, you expect me to trust you enough to fill in sign up information just to be able to use your app. And I think that's the biggest mistake of all. Now, I don't know if you built this to build up your portfolio to get a full-time position as a developer, or you're trying to get an audience around your product, but you've built zero trust in your user up until this point, and you expect them to sign up. So I would even expect many employers just to give up right here. And I think that's a very important lesson to learn from this. So I don't know what your app is right now. What you could do to build that trust, and that's kind of why I want to continue with this video, because I want to talk about that. Instead of the landing page being some sign up or sign in page, it could be an actual landing page full of content that's relevant. And content that's relevant is going to be content that's informing your user and building up trust in your user. And so think about, I don't think you have to provide tons of public links where they can navigate around and kind of just explore your app without signing in. Maybe your app revolves around having some sort of authentication and profile. I don't even know at this point. But what you can do is just build a landing page of maybe kind of just a little blurb of what your app is about, maybe some screenshots of how to use your app. Just like, you need to describe what this is about so you can inform your user enough for them to decide if this is going to bring value to them. So, I have no idea what this is, but I think this is a really, really important piece of advice. And I've actually made this mistake myself in the past, where it was highly dependent on them signing in and building up some customized settings with their profile. And it was a poor mistake. And I really didn't get any signups because of it. And it wasn't until I built a landing page describing what value I was going to bring to the user, to them, that I actually started getting engagement in my app. So that's the number one most important lesson. And then I kind of just wanted to touch on a few other things that might help as you kind of build out the rest of your public-facing layout. So first things first, if this is a portfolio project, you're hosting it on Heroku. Heroku is a really good platform, easy to push up a full stack project on. I think it takes like 30 seconds to load initially. That's not the best experience for someone viewing your website. Now, if this is a portfolio project where you're trying to gain clients, or you are trying to get an employer's attention and impress them, if you can afford it, I would actually either host it on something cheaper or pay I think it's $7 a month to be able to get this to always be live. Because I think if a visitor doesn't visit it I don't remember what it was, like every hour or something like that, your site kind of just, it goes to sleep, it kind of shuts down, and it'll reactivate. That's not a good experience if this is a portfolio project. It's just something to keep in mind, but I had portfolio projects like this when I was starting out. I just couldn't afford it, so I get it, but it's just something to be aware of. And then let's actually talk about the layout. So in your navigation, I mean, it's a pretty simple navigation. I was kind of actually playing around with it when I was deciding if I wanted to do this review. You have a lot of animations. But you have no content. You kind of overdid it on the animations. Like this little white triangle or whatever that is just appears. So like you're creating animations, but they're not helping. Your animations should enhance the content you're delivering, but you have no content. So I would actually take a lot of these animations out and just focus on good color contrast and putting up text, screenshots, whatever is going to help deliver your app and show the user that they can get value from your app. That's what you should be focusing on. So these animations seem overdone for something that has no content. And then, so like, one thing to understand about contrast is you need to understand what you want your user to do at that point in time. So I am on a sign-in page. I want them to sign in, but there is a huge background that is just very noisy. What am I supposed to focus on? Am I supposed to just stare at this background? I lose my focus with the form. You're not really influencing your user to go down the path that you want them to, which is to sign in here. So I think this background is very noisy. I've seen this. This is a pretty common animated background. I would imagine it's a lot to download on the client side. That's something to consider. But if you're gonna keep it, you gotta lighten this. You gotta fade it out. This needs to be your primary focus here. And then maybe yellow with a white input might not have the best contrast. So maybe a little bit of a darker modal, or even if it is I don't know, maybe a white modal with a more pronounced border around the inputs. I'm not so worried about this. It just doesn't appear that you have any consistent color patterns. So like try to keep it simple. You have a beautiful blue in the background. You could fade it, but you have a beautiful blue. I mean, just blue. I don't know, just like transitioning with different grays, white, maybe black borders. But now you're adding yellow for this background, which I don't think is needed. And then on a hover over, this is turning red. I think you're trying to use too many colors. I would simplify it. And there are plenty of sites where you can actually look up color patterns where you'll just get like a palette of 5 colors that work very well together. And you can even see examples of websites that use those patterns. So just Google that and try to get a pre-existing pattern and just let that flow through your site. People have kind of worked that out for you unless you are really focusing a lot on becoming a designer, like really pushing the UX side, and that's kind of the direction you want your career to go in. I would probably lean on a tool to help you do that while you focus on growing as a developer. But that's about it. It does look like you have some different experiences here. I don't know why this is inconsistent, so why would there be a white box here, but not in the sign-in? So I think there's just some inconsistencies. I think if I had to prioritize what you should focus on, I literally would build out a landing page that basically had some sort of giant header with some text inside of it, described your app a little bit, like what immediately, with as little text as possible, what value you actually bring to the user. What does your app do for them? And then maybe some screenshots underneath. If your app is really locked to an authentication, which very, very few apps actually are, so you might want to rethink whether a user needs to sign in for it. But I would start with a landing page. I would start with a very simple color pattern, one that exists already, and just go with that. So unfortunately, we can't dive into your app. You haven't really built any trust, and I think a major we hit kind of a major point of we need to work on building that trust with the user before your app becomes relevant or interesting, or makes someone want to dive into it, makes an employer want to actually say, okay, you know what, I'm actually going to put in my information, sign up, because he had me on that landing page. This app sounds really interesting, so I'm going to dive into it, and I'm going to invest a little bit to explore the app more. So that's kind of my primary piece of advice. But we could definitely do a follow-up once you kind of clean some of that up, and then maybe potentially dive into the app in the future. But I would I kind of touched on a lot of points, so I would start with everything that we talked about, and then I think it's going to make a world of difference for a portfolio project. So all right, thank you.